President Trump shocking the entertainment world, introducing a 100% tariff on movies produced overseas, causing massive ramifications. He claims that foreign tax incentives pose a national security threat, luring Hollywood productions away from the United States. The UK, Australia, Canada all becoming popular locations, and studio executives now wondering exactly what the implications will be of this announcement for upcoming films and also the future. The logistics, such as tariffs, remain unclear. Films don't fit the traditional definition of imported goods. So there's a big question mark about what this all means. To break it all down, we're joined by Oz Sultan, Chief Strategist at the Sultan Interactive Group. Great to see you. This came as somewhat of a shock.
It did. You know, this wasn't really necessarily expected. But I think as we kind of look industry by industry, as the administration is going through things and saying, what is the current state and what do we want the future state to be, film factors in tremendously. You know, over the course of the past 2 decades, we've seen incentives up to full film financing from other countries. We also have the administration's perspective that, you know, things that are filmed in, say, China or Russia or a variety of countries that aren't necessarily, you know, happy with American policy or foreign policy tend to have more of an inkling that is something that could be seen as, you know, somewhat anti-American. So I think that the impacts here are going to be multifold. One is that the cost of the film acquisition is going to go up. So your Netflixes, your Apples, your Amazons, as well as your traditional networks are more than likely to start looking at other alternatives if that, you know, is kicking them into the hundreds of millions of categories, which it more than likely will for some films. Secondarily, there's the impact on the streaming services themselves, right? So we haven't seen the full impacts of this EO just yet, but they could be facing additional costs in terms of streaming and carrying that on their streaming services. And then the third is syndication of these films, right? So after they've been up for whatever it is, 6 months, a year, and they start going into syndication on other networks, that could also be impacted as well. So you'd be seeing a trifecta of impact across the industry, specifically for streaming and definitely for theater viewers across America.
Yeah, a lot to unpack here. I've got a lot of questions about this. I think a lot of us do. Let's first hear from President Trump.
The movie tariffs, what they've done is other nations have been stealing the movies, the movie-making capabilities from the United States. And I said to a couple of people, what do you think? I've done some very strong research over the last week, and we're making very few movies now. Hollywood is being destroyed. Now, you have an incompetent, grossly incompetent governor that allowed that to happen. So I'm not just blaming other nations, but other nations, a lot of them, have stolen our movie industry. And I'm saying, if they're not willing to make a movie inside the United States, then we should have a tariff on movies that come in.
Okay, so I'm not going to give you a list and you don't have to answer these, but I'm going to just make a point of a few issues that I see here. Number one, imagine Netflix without Squid Games made in South Korea. Imagine a world without Crocodile Dundee heading to the United States and building closer ties between Australia and the United States that has led to AUKUS. The film industry the US film industry had a significant trade surplus last year, and all years it owns the world of filmmaking. Studios like Disney have studios based in Sydney that pay tax. The Australian government has announced that they want to basically force the international companies to make local content here in Australia, which can only work if it obviously works overseas. I don't see the point of this. I don't feel that there's a problem. Then there's the other aspect that the film industry has suffered because of COVID. It's suffered because of the shift away from being in the cinema and watching streaming, but Americans own the big streaming companies. It's not like there's much competition from anyone else there. I don't understand why it's so urgent. What do you think?
Well, think about what you just said. Australia is giving incentives for foreign movie producers to produce at home. I think that's the benchmark of what we're looking here, right? Is that Trump is saying that if you are getting, you know, foreign funding, but you produce your film here, we might be open to reducing that tariff upon you. But if you're producing your film 100% overseas, and it is largely funded by the Canadian Film Board, the British Broadcasting Corporation, the British Film Board, the German Film Board, as well as dozens of other film boards across the globe, it's saying let's set a new standard by which, if you're going to come into our market with 330 million consumers and you want to sell your content,
But isn't
well, then
it
your content
mostly
needs a different
US companies
standard.
that do this though? Like, isn't it Canada's film industry is pretty much owned by American companies, right? It's they're just set up shop over the border because of the huge cost of dealing with the unions in America.
It's a mix, and I think a lot of this is to drive more opportunities for American actors and actresses, because you're seeing more.
Not
often
famous
than
for being
not,
Trump voters. That's the interesting thing here.
No, they're not. Maybe they will become Trump voters after this.
If Bette Midler starts wearing a MAGA cap, I'm out of here.
if Bette Midler starts wearing a MAGA cap, I think the whole world is upended.
Didn't she sell her Tesla?
But I think she did. Actually, a lot of celebrities did. But there's one other thing to factor in here. There's 4 different burgeoning film areas in America, and they're not Hollywood. Hollywood's one. But Texas is another. There's multiple 100-acre studios in Georgia. And what you're going to see in 2026 is that Netflix bought a downsized military base in New Jersey and has turned the military base into a gigantic filmmaking venue. So, I think as we're starting to see moves in content, for example, I don't know if you've been made aware of Reel Short or any of the Drama Reel or other platforms out there. These are all films that are shot largely overseas. They're 2-minute clips. We're moving into ultra short form content. So as the content is changing, as the nature of the industry is changing, I think what Trump is looking at is, let's make us more competitive and let's focus on actors that are either in America or are American actors and actresses. That levels the playing field a little bit. Does it piss off a lot of our allies? Potentially. Is it going to have some dramatic ramifications in the type of content that's created? Absolutely. But I think that's what his intent was.
The biggest war is the TMZ, the 10-mile zone. That, of course, is the area in Los Angeles that if you film outside of, it's going to cost you a fortune. And the Hollywood film companies are obviously fighting against TikTok for influence and to survive. They're trying to fight against Instagram reels to for younger eyeballs. This is a fight of eyeballs these days. I mean, Netflix says that its competition isn't the film industry, it's Apple. It isn't the film industry. So I look at it as it seems to be something that could have a monumental impact on foreign films. I mean, let's take the Australian market, for example. And again, I'm not asking you to answer these questions. I'm just making the point that it's a very small population that requires us to make films that then get watched by other people. The United States has the opposite, a very large population that still requires those international sales. Imagine Disney without international sales or theme parks. I mean, the tit for tat here could become disastrous for the film industry if, for example, the French say, well, that's it, we're not playing any American films anymore. It seems to be a big concern. Or is this another Trump negotiating tactic for Canada? Is the war here with Canada, which has stolen so many jobs?
I think this is a negotiating tactic. I also think that it is not just Canada, but it's Europe. There's a tremendous amount of subsidy that goes into European films that gets shown on American screens, that gets shown on American streaming services, right? So what this does is this kind of sets a different tone where we're not saying that we have a sovereign wealth fund that's investing in film per se, as you do in many of these other countries, but what we're saying is that if they have the capacity to create these with full subsidies from government, then we're going to try and do something to minimize the impact of that subsidy carryover to the American market. Now, that in and of itself is a relatively smart play. What does come out of this, though, is yet to be seen, because as we've seen with the tariffs, as we've seen with a number of things, Trump is really using these as linchpins to negotiate. And I think the next couple of months will really tell us where we sit, not just with the film industry, but also what the bigger opportunities are for actors and actresses going into 26.
Yeah, it's going to be one to watch, particularly if Bette Midler wears that cap. Let's move on, because US House lawmakers have unveiled a new market structure bill aimed at regulating digital assets. The legislation seeks to establish clearer guidelines for crypto trading, ensuring greater transparency as well as consumer protection. We're speaking with Oz Sultan, the chief strategist, Sultan Interactive Group, about this. So talk to us about what the key components are of this new market structure bill.
So the biggest thing is that the bill in the House right now, which is hitting the floor, is designed to do two things. Number one, we step back from all of the SEC enforcement that we had on, crypto issues about a month ago. Now what we need is we need some fair guidelines as to what will be enforced, what won't be enforced. It is more than likely that the pump fund type of tokens that you have out there, these meme coins that get rugged on a consistent basis, will face a lot of enforcement, whereas the coins that are hitting the market that are looking to provide utility and or are encapsulating real world assets will fit within a new framework that allows them to operate. Now, this has got a lot of hurdles ahead of it. While it's easily going to pass the House, the Senate has already cited and noted that they have a number of concerns, not just with this bill, but with upcoming crypto bills that are going forward for altcoins and also potentially for Bitcoin in the fall. So while this will clear the House easily, what this bill transforms into in the Senate and finally becomes law to be signed by President Trump is yet to be seen. And what we in the industry are optimistic about is a standardization of regulations, a standardization of enforcement, and really a clear definition of what you can own and how it is classified. Because we still are dealing with tax folks that, in some cases it is an asset, in some cases it's a currency. And those incur two completely different taxation levels based upon how they're treated. So if we can fix the treatment, we can standardize what is fair game, and we can standardize what is, rug pull sort of chicanery within the industry. It's going to become very easy for people to do business in America, and it's going to allow us to have crypto proliferation in this fourth industrial revolution that is really significant.
And how are investors and crypto firms now reacting to this?
Positive. I think if you look at Van Eck, which is really kind of a big market indicator, they are optimistic. If you look at where your crypto hedge funds are and your ETFs, there are more ETFs that are looking to be listed going into Q2, Q3 of this year. And then at the same point in time, with new tokens that are coming out that are more than likely going to have USDT or XRP trading pairs, it sets the tone for what the future of commerce becomes. And it also sets the tone for where these altcoins are going to fit inside of that larger ecosystem of cross-border trade, which is really the end-all be-all for what crypto should be operating in.
All right, we'll leave it there for now. Always appreciate your insights, Oz Sultan there. Thank you.
Thank you.